Hi, everyone. Welcome back to English with Lisa. I'm Lisa, and today we have a very special episode where we dive into the flow of a full day, how we handle work, unwind, and finally wrap up our evening.
And I'm David. We're excited to share our real conversations, reflections, and little moments that happen every day. It's not just about English, it's about connecting words to life naturally.
Yes, we want you to feel motivated to listen, repeat, and notice how phrases and expressions pop up in real situations. By the end of this episode, you'll have words, expressions, and sentence patterns ready to use in your own daily conversations.
Exactly. And even if your day feels long or stressful, just hearing and practicing these moments with us can make English learning feel natural and fun, like you're living the language instead of just studying it.
So get comfy, maybe grab a cup of tea, and join us as we walk through the day, from work routines to evening reflection, sharing tips, phrases, and expressions that really stick.
Let's get started.
Weekdays always feel different from weekends because even when there is free time, it feels smaller and more precious, and the day itself often leaves your energy in pieces.
Yes, I feel that too because weekday free time comes with a subtle pressure. Like you're supposed to rest, but also prepare for the next day. And not duality makes it feel delicate.
When I first get home, the first few minutes are always the heaviest because my body arrives before my mind does, and I notice how tightly my shoulders are holding tension without me realizing.
Exactly. And even a few quiet moments standing by the doorway or just walking into the kitchen can feel like a mini reset, letting the day slowly drift away.
Sometimes I like to take a deep breath and pause, listening to the faint sounds of the neighborhood, and that small shift immediately separates work from personal time.
I do the same because even tiny sensory cues like hearing distant traffic or birds make my brain understand that work is over and the evening has begun.
After that, I usually change into comfortable clothes, something soft that lets me feel my body relax and signals that I don't need to keep performing or moving quickly.
Yes, and changing clothes feels like an invisible boundary being drawn between the structured day and the flexible evening, almost like pressing a reset button.
Sometimes I pour myself a cup of tea or water and move slowly around the house, noticing small things I normally ignore during the day. And that shift in attention helps my mind unwind.
I notice that too, because even walking from one room to another without rush makes the evening feel intentional and personal rather than leftover time.
Some evenings, I just sit quietly on the couch or by the window, letting my thoughts drift and not feeling the need to do anything productive. And that stillness itself feels like a reward.
I completely agree because simply being present without expectations releases tension in a way that nothing else can, and it makes the evening feel like a soft landing after the day.
Sometimes I take a short walk outside, just around the block, feeling the air and noticing small movements in nature. And those few minutes create a sense of freedom after hours of confinement.
Exactly. And even on days when I don't leave the house, looking out the window or stepping onto a balcony feels like a gentle shift that helps my energy reset naturally.
Sometimes I like to read a few pages of something light or listen to soft music, just enough to change focus from work stress to personal enjoyment, and that small change feels surprisingly restorative.
Yes, even a few minutes of calm content or music creates a mental space where work no longer intrudes, and it allows the mind to recover gradually.
Sometimes I talk with a family member or roommate about small events from the day, like a conversation that made me laugh or a minor challenge I handled, and it feels grounding.
I feel the same because sharing the day in small bits helps me decompress, and it's different from formal discussions or problem solving. It's purely connection.
On other evenings, I simply enjoy absolute silence, sitting on the sofa or in my favorite chair, noticing the little details around me, like the light or shadows, and letting my mind wander freely.
Yes, and that type of quiet is restorative in a way that even music or small chores can't achieve because it gives the brain total freedom.
Sometimes I combine small things, like stretching gently while listening to music, sipping tea, or glancing out the window, and each action builds a layered calm that feels intentional.
Exactly, and layering small relaxing actions creates an evening rhythm that makes you feel taken care of, even if the time is short.
Even minor chores like tidying a small corner or washing a cup feel satisfying because they improve my space without feeling like work, and they contribute to a sense of calm order.
Yes, small actions like that subtly prepare the home for relaxation, and the environment itself supports the unwinding process without adding pressure.
Sometimes I step outside again in the evening just for a few minutes to feel the fresh air and notice how the world slows down, and that moment feels almost meditative.
I do that too, and even a short evening walk gives perspective, letting you see the day as a whole rather than being caught in individual tasks or stress.
Sometimes I write down a few thoughts from the day, not as a task, but to release them from my mind, and the act itself feels cleansing.
Yes, reflecting without judgment helps me process what happened, and it's completely different from analyzing tasks at work. It's just noticing and releasing.
By combining reflection with quiet activities, I feel the evening develop its own rhythm that doesn't resemble the workday at all, and that distinction is comforting.
Absolutely. And when you layer those small moments, movement, quiet, small chores, or brief conversation, the evening feels like a complete transition, not just leftover time.
Even watching a short episode of a favorite show or listening to a podcast feels different because it's chosen freely, not scheduled, and the choice itself adds a subtle sense of control.
Yes, and familiarity in content reduces mental effort and creates comfort, which is exactly what weekday evenings need after structured work hours.
Preparing a light snack slowly, noticing the textures and smells, becomes a small sensory ritual that signals the day's responsibilities are done and my mind begins to ease.
Yes, and combining sensory activities with small movement or gentle conversation strengthens the evening's calm, making each moment intentional.
Sitting quietly afterward, noticing the release of tension in shoulders and back, is one of my favorite parts of weekday free time because it's subtle yet deeply relaxing.
That's when the evening truly feels complete. Not busy, not exciting, just balanced. And it sets a foundation for rest and tomorrow's energy.
Even small free moments help separate work from life, making each day feel distinct rather than a blur of tasks and obligations.
Exactly. Quality matters more than quantity. A mindful 30 minutes can feel more restorative than 2 hours of distracted activity.
By the time I'm ready for bed, I feel lighter, calmer, and more grounded. And even short weekday evening rituals create continuity that carries into the next day.
And that's the quiet power of weekday free time. It's subtle, slow, but essential, shaping your energy, mood, and readiness for tomorrow without fanfare.
After leaving work or school, I often feel that the first few minutes at home are the heaviest because my body has arrived, but my mind is still caught up in meetings, lessons, or assignments, and I need time to shift.
I feel the same because the transition from structured responsibilities to personal space always takes a few minutes, and even small actions like taking off shoes or sitting down seem to help reset my focus.
Sometimes I just stand by the doorway for a moment, breathing and letting the sounds of the outside world fade. And that pause feels like a quiet signal that the day is ending.
Yes, that pause is important because it creates a mental boundary between work and personal life, and without it, the evening feels blurred and rushed.
After that, I usually change into comfortable clothes, something soft that makes my body feel free and signals that I don't need to keep performing or moving quickly.
I do the same, and even that simple act of changing clothes shifts my mood, almost like telling my mind that it's allowed to relax, finally.
Sometimes I prepare a small snack, something light like fruit or tea, and I do it slowly, noticing the smells and textures because the process itself feels comforting after a long day.
Yes, I love small evening rituals like that because they create a sense of order and calm without pressure, and the brain starts associating those actions with peace.
If I have energy, I might step outside for a short walk, just around the block or in the garden, and the cool air immediately changes my focus from the day's tasks to the present moment.
That's exactly how I feel. Even 10 minutes outside lets my mind breathe, and I notice things I missed during the busy day, like the movement of leaves or the sounds of the neighborhood.
Sometimes I prefer to stay inside, reading or listening to something soft, because I want quiet and gentle stimulation instead of more movement or noise.
Yes, and on days when I choose to stay indoors, even watching a light show or listening to music feels restorative because it's controlled and comfortable.
Occasionally, I talk with a family member or roommate in the evening, sharing small details about the day, and that conversation feels refreshing without feeling like work.
I notice the same because casual conversation in the evening has a different energy. It's relaxed, supportive, and doesn't require planning or performance.
On other nights, I might prefer absolute silence, just sitting on the sofa or in my favorite chair, letting thoughts drift naturally, and the quiet helps my mind untangle from the day.
I completely relate because silence feels like a soft reset, and I can feel my tension release slowly, almost like the day is fading gently rather than abruptly.
Sometimes I combine small actions like stretching while listening to music and sipping tea while sitting quietly, and the combination creates a layered relaxation that feels very intentional.
Exactly. Layering these small habits works better than doing them alone because each action supports the other, making the evening feel cohesive and calm.
Even minor chores like tidying a small corner, adjusting cushions, or washing a dish feel productive in a relaxed way because they improve the environment without stress.
Yes, small tasks have this subtle effect. They mark the space as yours and prepare it for rest, which makes the evening feel more comfortable and organized.
Some evenings, I spend a few minutes stepping outside again, just to check the night sky or feel the breeze. And the contrast between inside and outside enhances my sense of calm.
I do that too. And it's interesting how short walks or even standing on the balcony change your energy, giving you perspective and signaling that the day is closing naturally.
Sometimes I journal or note small thoughts from the day, not as a task, but just to unload the mind. And that little act feels surprisingly relieving.
Yes, reflecting quietly allows you to process things without pressure, and it's different from work reflection because there's no urgency or evaluation.
When I combine quiet reflection with small movements like stretching or gentle walking, it feels like the evening gains its own rhythm separate from the day.
Absolutely. And that rhythm becomes part of what makes weekday evenings enjoyable, even if the time is short, because it's personalized and intentional.
Some evenings, I choose to watch a short episode of a show, something familiar and comforting, and the predictability of it adds a gentle layer of relaxation.
I do the same because knowing what to expect reduces mental load, and familiar content creates emotional comfort after a long day.
Even preparing a small meal or drink slowly, noticing the sounds, smells, and textures feels calming, and I feel more present than I do during the busy hours of the day.
Yes, and combining sensory experiences with small movement or conversation gives the evening a richer quality without exhausting me physically or mentally.
Sometimes I take extra time to just sit quietly after these activities, feeling the cumulative effect of calm and noticing that tension has left my shoulders and back.
That moment is important because it's like a reward for navigating the day and the body finally syncs with the mind in a relaxed state.
By the end of the evening, I feel lighter and ready for sleep. And even if the day was hectic, this slow unwinding gives me a sense of balance.
Yes, and protecting this time is essential because it shapes the way I feel the next morning, making weekday free time not just a pause, but a real recharge.
Even short free time, when approached like this, feels meaningful because it's intentional and personal rather than wasted or rushed.
Exactly. It's not about how long the evening is, but how you spend it and the moments you allow for presence, reflection, and gentle activity.
That's why I appreciate weekday evenings, even when they're brief, because they help me transition from responsibility to personal life smoothly.
Yes, and once you experience it, you start valuing small routines and simple pleasures more than you thought possible.
By the time I'm ready for bed, I feel lighter, more grounded, and prepared for tomorrow's challenges without carrying leftover stress.
And that's the magic of weekday free time. It's subtle, quiet, but incredibly restorative when you respect it fully.
I've noticed that some evenings I really crave the quiet of home, especially after a long day, because there's something comforting about being in a familiar space where I don't have to think about moving or interacting with the outside world.
I feel that too, because home feels safe and there's no pressure to make decisions or meet expectations. So even small things like sitting on the sofa or listening to soft music feel indulgent.
Sometimes I like to stay in and stretch a little, drink a warm tea, and watch the light change in the room. And each of these small actions makes me feel fully present in the moment.
Yes, I do the same. And even just feeling the floor beneath my feet while moving around the house slowly helps me disconnect from the busy energy of the day.
Other times, staying inside feels too stagnant, and I feel restless if I don't get outside, even for a short time, because I need to feel air and movement to shift my mood.
Exactly. And stepping outside doesn't have to be a big plan. Sometimes a 5 or 10 minute walk around the block is enough to refresh the mind and reset emotions.
When I walk outside, I notice small things that I usually ignore during the day, like the way the wind moves the trees or the distant hum of traffic, and it helps me feel connected to the world beyond my walls.
I completely relate because even brief exposure to nature or the evening sky creates a sense of perspective that's hard to find when you stay inside all the time.
Sometimes I combine both approaches, starting the evening at home with tea or music, then stepping outside for a short walk, and I feel that layering the calmness indoors with the openness outside gives the perfect balance.
Yes, and that balance matters because indoor time is restorative and controlled, while outdoor time feels liberating and expansive, and together they create a more complete feeling of rest.
Even sitting near a window watching the changing light outside can feel like stepping out without leaving the room, and I often do this on colder evenings when a walk isn't practical.
I notice that too, because the visual cues of the outside world help shift my brain into a different rhythm, almost as if the day itself is winding down gently around me.
Sometimes I simply breathe slowly while standing in the open doorway, letting my senses take in the sounds and smells, and that short pause makes me feel lighter immediately.
Exactly, because the combination of motion, sound, and air creates a sensory break that even a quiet room can't fully provide, and I notice my tension melting away.
On some days, I prefer complete silence indoors, focusing on a single task like reading, journaling, or listening to music, and the concentration itself feels soothing.
Yes, and the same evening could feel different if I decide to go outside, because the movement and scenery create a gentle distraction that's refreshing in a different way.
I've realized that alternating between indoor and outdoor relaxation helps me process the day's stress more completely than sticking to one method alone, and I often plan my evening around this flow.
Absolutely. And even small actions like making a snack slowly or stretching while listening to music, when combined with a short walk, produce a natural rhythm that signals rest to both mind and body.
Sometimes I like to notice small details outside, like how shadows fall or how streetlights glow, and it makes me feel connected while also giving my thoughts freedom to wander.
I feel the same because these subtle observations slow my brain in a way nothing inside can do, and it's almost meditative without requiring formal effort.
Even moving slowly indoors, paying attention to little things like the warmth of a cup in my hands, feels comforting and grounding, and it balances any emotional heaviness from the day.
Yes, and combining sensory awareness indoors with minimal movement outdoors creates a full circle experience where both mind and body feel engaged yet relaxed.
Sometimes I talk quietly with someone at home while sitting in a calm space, sharing little moments of the day, and that conversation feels supportive without pressure.
Exactly. Casual, low energy interactions make evenings richer because connection itself is a form of rest, especially when it doesn't require performance or planning.
Other evenings, I enjoy being fully alone, noticing details of the room or stepping outside silently, and it helps me process thoughts that accumulated during the workday.
Yes, solitude in the evening has its own rhythm. It allows reflection, decompression, and a gentle recharge without distractions or obligations.
Sometimes I combine small indoor rituals like stretching, tea, and music with a short outdoor moment, and the effect feels surprisingly restorative compared to any single activity alone.
Exactly, and the layering of multiple low effort, high quality relaxation practices creates a sense of completion for the evening. So by the time I sit down for the night, I feel steady.
Even simple sensory experiences, like feeling the air, hearing the wind, or noticing light, enrich the evening in ways that make the short weekday free time feel meaningful.
I completely agree, because these small experiences act as natural transitions, signaling to the body and mind that it's time to rest, and the effect carries into sleep.
Some evenings I only step outside briefly but focus on it fully, and even that short moment feels like it expands the entire evening.
Yes, presence matters more than duration. Fully experiencing a few minutes outside often produces more calm than an hour of distracted indoor activity.
By the end of the evening, whether I stayed home, stepped outside, or combined both, I feel lighter and ready to transition into sleep, carrying balance into the next day.
Exactly. And that is why these simple decisions, choosing indoor calm, outdoor air, or a mix, shape the quality of weekday evenings so significantly.
Even small mindful actions like sipping tea slowly, noticing shadows, or walking briefly leave a lasting impression on mood and energy, making weekday free time surprisingly powerful.
Yes, and once you notice the impact of these micro moments, you start protecting them as essential parts of your routine rather than optional gaps.
By the time I finally lie down to rest, I can reflect on the evening with satisfaction, realizing that the combination of indoor comfort and outdoor perspective created a smooth ending to the day.
Exactly. And that smooth transition is what makes weekday free time special. It's subtle, intentional, and quietly transformative without being flashy or structured.
As the evening progresses, I often find myself thinking about the small routines that signal the day is really coming to an end, and even simple tasks like tidying a corner or organizing papers feel surprisingly significant.
Yes, I noticed that too. Because these small rituals are like invisible markers telling the mind and body that work is done and the personal part of the day is beginning, and it creates a sense of closure.
Sometimes I start by washing dishes or preparing something light to eat, and even though it's small, the act of completing something tangible gives a sense of accomplishment and signals the transition clearly.
Exactly. And for me, organizing my workspace or setting out clothes for the next day has a similar effect. It reduces mental clutter and allows my mind to relax more fully during the evening.
I also take a few minutes to check my personal emails or messages, not as work, but just to connect with friends or family, and those small interactions feel soothing rather than demanding.
Yes, casual check ins make a subtle difference because they're low pressure ways to close the loop on the day and feel connected without draining energy.
Sometimes I enjoy a short walk around the block at this stage, noticing the quiet streets or the lights of nearby buildings, and it creates a sense of rhythm as the world slows down.
I completely agree because even 5 or 10 minutes outside allows me to shift from the mental space of responsibility into one of calm, and it feels like a gentle pause before fully winding down.
Other evenings, I simply spend time on minor chores inside, like folding laundry or straightening up the living room, and these tasks create a sense of completion and order without requiring heavy effort.
Yes, and I notice how that order affects my mood. When the space is organized, my mind feels lighter and I can approach the evening without lingering stress.
Sometimes I like to make a cup of tea or a light snack while sitting down with a book or listening to music, and the combination of taste, sound, and movement is deeply comforting.
Exactly. Sensory engagement in the evening strengthens the sense of transition because it ties physical experiences to the mental closure of the day.
Occasionally, I step outside for a few minutes to feel the air or watch the streetlights, and even this short exposure creates a layer of calm that complements indoor relaxation.
Yes, layering indoor and outdoor moments subtly reinforces the feeling that the day is complete and sets up a smoother transition into sleep.
Talking briefly with a family member or roommate during the stage also feels rewarding because sharing small reflections or funny incidents from the day strengthens connection and signals that the personal part of life is active.
Exactly. Those conversations are casual yet meaningful. They allow a mental shift away from tasks without demanding formal attention or emotional labor.
Some evenings, I prefer absolute quiet, just sitting or lying down with no distractions, noticing the small sounds in the room or the faint noises outside, and that stillness feels restorative.
Yes, and stillness is often underestimated. It allows the nervous system to slow down naturally, which is why even short periods of intentional silence in the evening can feel rejuvenating.
Sometimes I check small tasks for tomorrow, like making a short to-do list or preparing my bag, but I keep it light and non-urgent because the goal is closure, not pressure.
Exactly. Planning lightly without stress helps the mind feel organized while keeping the evening relaxing, and the small action gives a sense of preparedness.
I often notice that by the time I finish these routines, even minor ones, my shoulders feel less tight, my mind is calmer, and I can sense the difference between unfinished stress and the intentional winding down of the day.
Yes, those subtle physical cues are important because they reinforce the mental transition and let me feel that the day is truly over.
Sometimes I take a moment to sit quietly with a cup of tea, looking around the room or observing the light outside, and these few minutes feel like a small ceremony of rest.
I completely agree. Even simple rituals without words or effort can signal the brain to relax deeply, and they make the evening feel intentional.
After completing these small routines, I often feel a sense of relief, like a weight is lifted, and I can finally let go of the day's tasks fully.
Yes, that feeling is almost physical. It's not just mental calm, but a bodily acknowledgement that responsibility is done and personal time begins.
Sometimes I like to spend a few minutes reflecting quietly on the day, noticing what went well or what felt challenging, and it helps me process the day without judgment.
Exactly. Reflection at this stage is subtle and restorative. It doesn't involve problem solving or stress, just awareness and gentle processing.
Even the act of tidying a corner, arranging a cup, or turning off lights carefully can feel symbolic, signaling that the day's energy is fully wrapped up and the night can begin.
Yes, small gestures have a bigger impact than we often realize because they mark boundaries in time and create comfort psychologically and physically.
Sometimes I combine short indoor chores with a brief outdoor pause, and the contrast strengthens the evening routine, balancing calm and openness naturally.
Exactly. Combining movement and quiet, indoor and outdoor, makes the routine feel complete and satisfying, and it helps the mind separate the day from personal time.
By the time I finish these evening routines, I feel lighter, more grounded, and more ready for sleep, carrying calm and order into the next day.
Yes, and that sense of closure is essential because it prevents stress from spilling over into the night and allows the body to recharge fully.
Even small intentional actions in the evening, tidying, light chores, brief walks, or quiet reflection, create a sense of accomplishment and readiness that can shape the next day positively.
Exactly, and protecting these routines, no matter how brief, becomes an important habit because they reinforce mental clarity and emotional balance consistently.
I often notice that the cumulative effect of short routines, even just 20 or 30 minutes, produces a surprisingly deep sense of calm and prepares me to enjoy the night fully.
Yes, and by the time I finally sit down or lie down, I feel the tangible relief from completing these rituals, and the day's stress has naturally dissipated.
And that's what makes short weekday routines so powerful. They're simple, intentional, and they mark the day's end clearly, leaving space for rest and personal presence. Sitting down in a restaurant after such a long day feels like a small celebration because even the simplest act of choosing a seat and noticing the surroundings gives a sense of personal time finally arriving.
Exactly, and the moment you sit, you can feel the weight of the day slowly lifting, like the air itself becomes lighter. And it's remarkable how much a change in environment can influence your mood.
I often glance around the restaurant, noticing the soft lighting, the gentle hum of conversation, and the small details like the way waiters move or the scent of food, and it immediately signals that this is my time now.
Yes, even small sensory details are grounding because after hours of structured work, they remind you that the outside world continues in a calm rhythm, not demanding anything from you personally.
Sometimes I close my eyes for a moment, just feeling the chair under me and listening to the subtle sounds around. And that pause is almost meditative, letting my mind shift away from work completely.
I do that too, because even a short mindful pause helps me acknowledge that I've finished my responsibilities and can now enjoy a relaxed state without guilt or hurry.
When the menu arrives, I notice how choosing something to eat or drink becomes a small act of joy because it's entirely my decision and it's not tied to any obligation.
Exactly, and even the act of slowly reading the menu and imagining flavors is calming. It's the first step in transitioning from stress to leisure.
Sometimes I start with a simple beverage like tea or juice, sipping slowly while watching the people around me, and the simple sensory focus helps me sink into the evening.
Yes, and the combination of taste, movement, and observation makes the moment feel more substantial, like a reward for completing a full day of responsibilities.
I notice that talking to someone at the table helps even more, sharing how the day went, the small frustrations, and the tiny successes creates relief because it's spoken acknowledgement of the day.
Exactly. Discussing the day's stress in a relaxed environment lets you externalize tension, and hearing someone else reflect back empathy and understanding reinforces calm.
Sometimes we laugh about minor mishaps at work or moments that seemed overwhelming, and laughter itself feels like a physical release that complements the mental relief.
Yes, even small chuckles loosen tension in your shoulders and neck, and I notice my posture naturally softens as the conversation flows without hurry.
Occasionally, I like to watch small interactions around the restaurant, like families talking or friends enjoying each other's company, and it gives a sense of human connection that's separate from work stress.
I completely agree, because seeing life continue in simple, joyful patterns reassures the mind that stress is temporary and moments of calm are always accessible.
Sometimes I take a moment to focus on my breathing, letting each inhale and exhale slow naturally while continuing the conversation, and the combination enhances the feeling of restoration.
Exactly, and breathing mindfully while interacting gently with someone makes the experience richer because the body and mind are synchronized in relaxation.
We often talk about minor wins during the day, like finishing a report or handling a tricky task. And acknowledging these moments feels satisfying because stress isn't just about challenges, but also about recognition of effort.
Yes, celebrating small accomplishments releases dopamine subtly, and it gives the evening a constructive tone rather than just being a passive escape.
Sometimes we notice our posture shifting naturally as conversation flows, from rigid from work to relaxed, leaning slightly back in the chair, and it signals that mental release has begun.
Exactly, because the physical release of tension mirrors the mental one, and by the time we finish a dish or a drink, the day already feels lighter.
Even ordering dessert can feel symbolic, like a reward, because it's entirely for pleasure, and choosing something sweet or comforting adds a subtle layer of happiness to the evening.
Yes, and the anticipation of tasting something enjoyable engages the senses fully, which is exactly what weekday stress relief needs: immersion in the moment.
We often exchange stories about minor annoyances like traffic or unexpected meetings, and the act of articulating them aloud turns frustration into something manageable and even funny sometimes.
Absolutely. Verbalizing tension makes it tangible and releasable, and having a listener who responds naturally makes the experience restorative rather than draining.
Sometimes I notice my gaze wandering outside the window, seeing people passing or streetlights flicker, and it subtly shifts attention away from internal stress to observation of calm movement.
Yes, and observing the environment while talking or thinking lightly helps the mind feel expansive instead of trapped, which is crucial after long hours of focused work.
By the end of the evening, we often feel a shared sense of relief, like the day's pressure has been distributed, and the combination of food, conversation, and environment creates a holistic sense of closure.
Exactly, and it's remarkable how a few intentional minutes of calm activity in a restaurant can turn what felt like a long, exhausting day into a manageable, even enjoyable memory.
Sometimes we reflect quietly, sipping the last of our drinks, and notice how subtle routines like polite conversation, laughter, and observation compound into real relaxation.
Yes, the day's stress isn't magically gone, but the shift in focus allows the body to release tension naturally, which is essential for true evening rest.
Even small gestures like pushing back the chair, thanking the waiter, or standing slowly contribute to a mindful conclusion of the evening, and these actions reinforce calm transition.
Exactly. It's a physical and psychological wrap up, signaling that the structured day is done and personal time continues at home or in whatever follows next.
Sometimes I feel that this shared, relaxed space, whether talking, laughing, or quietly observing, strengthens bonds and reminds me that stress is temporary and relief is always accessible.
Yes, and when we finally leave the restaurant, the air feels different. The walk back home is lighter, and the day seems less heavy simply because we honored a pause.
Even thinking about tomorrow while walking slowly doesn't feel urgent. It's just preparation rather than pressure because the evening has provided perspective and calm.
Exactly. This simple act of shifting environment, sharing reflection, and relaxing together turns what could have been ordinary weekday stress into an intentional recovery period.
By the time we reach home, the weight of the day has dissolved and I feel grounded, connected, and ready to enjoy the night without leftover tension.
Yes, and that's why small, intentional routines, whether in a restaurant, at home, or even just a short outdoor pause, are surprisingly powerful for emotional and mental restoration.
It's remarkable how shared presence, gentle conversation, and mindful observation can turn the end of a stressful day into a meaningful, restorative experience that carries into tomorrow.
Once we return home from the restaurant, there's a comforting sense of relief, like the physical act of moving into familiar surroundings immediately signals that the day is slowing down and personal time has begun. Exactly, and even small movements like taking off shoes or hanging a jacket feel symbolic, marking a transition from structured hours into quiet, restorative evening moments.
Sometimes I start with a short walk around the apartment or home just to stretch my legs and let the lingering energy of the day dissipate naturally, and that motion feels surprisingly grounding.
I do the same because even a brief movement in familiar spaces allows the body to release tension that accumulates during prolonged sitting or mental focus.
After that, I often like to prepare a small snack or a cup of tea, and the act of slow preparation itself becomes a mindful ritual that turns routine into a deliberate moment of care.
Yes, and sipping something warm while reflecting quietly gives the mind a gentle pause, allowing thoughts to settle instead of racing through unfinished tasks.
Sometimes I take a few minutes to check the apartment, tidy small areas, or fold laundry, and these minor activities create an unconscious sense of closure and calm.
Exactly. The repetition of small, familiar actions signals to the brain that responsibility is complete, and that subtle effect is more powerful than it seems.
Occasionally, I step onto the balcony or by the window for a short moment, letting the evening air brush against my face, and I notice how it shifts my mood without requiring much energy.
I completely relate because even a brief exposure to outside sounds or night air creates a gentle mental reset and reinforces that the day's stress is ending.
Sometimes I sit quietly, noticing small details indoors, the light from a lamp, the sound of a distant car, or even the ticking of a clock, and it helps me slow down completely.
Yes, and combining stillness with gentle awareness makes the mind feel expansive yet calm, which is essential after long hours of mental or physical work.
After this, I often take a moment to reflect on what went well today, the small victories and the minor challenges that were managed successfully, and this reflection feels both grounding and reassuring.
Exactly. By articulating successes, even mentally, the brain reinforces positive experiences and reduces the emotional weight of any frustrations, making the evening feel lighter.
Sometimes I like to write a few quick notes in a journal or check items off a to-do list from the day, not as work, but as acknowledgement of effort, and it feels satisfying.
Yes, documenting small achievements transform them into tangible reminders, and the evening becomes an active, restorative period rather than passive downtime.
Other evenings, I prefer total quiet, just sitting or lying on the couch, noticing my breathing and letting thoughts pass without judgment. And that practice creates deep calm.
Exactly. Allowing thoughts to drift without interference signals to the mind and body that responsibility is done and relaxation is safe and permitted.
Sometimes I combine quiet reflection with minor rituals, like stretching or sipping a beverage, and the combination of movement, taste, and awareness enhances the restorative effect.
Yes, and layering sensory experiences with mindfulness strengthens relaxation because it engages multiple channels of awareness, producing a more profound sense of calm.
Occasionally, I talk briefly with family or roommates, sharing minor thoughts or laughter, and the casual exchange creates emotional closure without requiring heavy discussion.
Exactly. These small social interactions act as emotional punctuation marks, signaling the end of the day's external demands and reinforcing the sense of personal time.
Sometimes I notice subtle physical signs like shoulders loosening or posture softening, and I realize that my body is finally matching my mental state.
Yes, and being aware of that alignment between body and mind enhances the overall feeling of balance, which is the essence of evening restoration.
Other evenings, I might listen to soft music or ambient sounds, letting it fill the space without distraction, and that gentle sensory input deepens the sense of winding down.
Exactly. Sound has a way of guiding attention subtly, and the presence of calming auditory elements can make the transition from stress to rest effortless.
Sometimes I combine quiet reflection with minor planning, thinking lightly about tomorrow's priorities, but keeping it flexible. And that approach reduces anxiety rather than increasing it.
Yes, intentional but gentle preparation allows the mind to feel organized without pressure, making the night feel secure and uninterrupted.
Sometimes I notice the temperature, the softness of my clothing, or the coziness of a blanket, and these small physical comforts add to the emotional ease that has been building.
Exactly. Physical sensations reinforce mental relaxation, and being conscious of them amplifies the overall restorative effect of the evening.
Sometimes I pause to think of moments I'm grateful for, like a smooth day at work, a supportive conversation, or even a delicious meal, and it rounds out the day positively.
Yes, and gratitude has a subtle but powerful effect. It shifts attention away from tension and towards contentment, enhancing the night's calm.
By the time I finally move toward bed, I feel a deep sense of relief, knowing that the combination of reflection, quiet, minor chores, and intentional pauses has balanced the day.
Exactly, and not balance creates a bridge between daytime stress and nighttime rest, allowing the body and mind to transition fully into sleep.
Sometimes even the act of dimming lights, adjusting pillows, or arranging a blanket feels symbolic, signaling the mind that everything is settled for the night.
Yes, and those small intentional gestures close the mental loop, leaving space for rest without lingering tension or unfinished thoughts.
Even lying down quietly, I can feel a sense of satisfaction from completing small evening rituals, and it feels like a subtle reward for the entire day.
Exactly. And by intentionally ending the day this way, the stress of work, traffic, and obligations no longer lingers, leaving space for calm, sleep, and rejuvenation.
Sometimes I reflect on tomorrow lightly, imagining a smooth morning but without urgency, and the anticipation feels hopeful rather than stressful.
Yes, this gentle transition prepares the mind for the next day while fully embracing the present moment, and it strengthens the habit of conscious evening routines.
By integrating reflection, minor chores, sensory awareness, quiet conversations, and personal comfort, the evening becomes a meaningful closure rather than just the absence of work.
Exactly. And over time, these intentional routines build a sense of rhythm, stability, and calm that affects both sleep quality and daily energy positively.
And that's why wrapping up the day at home is as important as any other activity. It provides the mental and emotional punctuation that allows life to feel complete.
Yes, it's remarkable how these small, deliberate steps, combined with awareness and comfort, transform ordinary evenings into restorative experiences that carry into tomorrow.
While we were talking about evening routines, I noticed we used a lot of expressions that really capture the flow of a day. And I think it's interesting how certain words and phrases naturally describe our feelings and actions.
Exactly. For example, when I said the weight of the day slowly lifting, that's a metaphorical way to express stress leaving your body. And phrases like that make conversations sound vivid and relatable.
Yes, and words like transition or shift appeared several times because they describe moving from one phase to another, like from work to personal time, and they're really useful in daily discussions.
Right. And verbs like wind down, settle in, lean back, or release tension are phrasal verbs and expressions that naturally describe relaxing actions, which are common in daily conversations.
We also used expressions about minor actions signaling closure, like tidy a corner, fold laundry, or arranging a blanket. And these phrases connect physical movement with mental calm.
Yes, and notice the repeated use of descriptive adjectives like familiar, cozy, gentle, or intentional. These adjectives convey feelings, mood, and atmosphere, which are very helpful to express subtle experiences.
Exactly. Phrases like small victories, minor wins, subtle physical cues, or light reflection show how to describe accomplishments and emotions naturally without exaggeration.
And we used time expressions like by the time I finish, after that, occasionally, sometimes, or as the evening progresses. These are key for sequencing events and making long conversations clear.
Yes, and notice the grammar in sentences like, even a brief movement in familiar spaces allows the body to release tension. Here we used even plus noun phrase plus verb to emphasize the importance of small actions.
Exactly. And also sentences like the combination of movement, taste, and awareness enhances the restorative effect show how to connect multiple ideas smoothly using the combination of and, which is common in descriptive speaking.
We also used continuous forms a lot, like sitting quietly, listening to music, noticing the small sounds, which show ongoing actions and make storytelling more vivid and engaging.
Yes, continuous forms make it feel like the action is happening right now, which keeps the listener immersed in the description rather than making it feel static.
We also used modal verbs for subtle advice or possibility, like can feel, could signal, may help, which are gentle and natural ways to give suggestions in conversation.
Right. And notice how polite forms appear even casually. For example, when we say, let's notice, I often like to, I sometimes take a moment. These soften statements and make conversations smooth.
Another pattern we used was cause and effect, like even small gestures have a bigger impact because they mark boundaries in time. Using because connects reasoning naturally.
Yes, and sequential connectors like first, then, finally appeared naturally too, like when we described short evening routines or the flow of restaurant relaxation, helping learners narrate events clearly.
We also used comparisons to express subtle differences like indoor versus outdoor moments, mental versus physical tension, or structured day versus personal time. These comparisons help describe contrasts effectively.
And verbs expressing mental states like notice, realize, reflect, and acknowledge were used frequently to convey awareness or emotional shifts, which makes conversations sound thoughtful.
Yes, and adjectives describing feelings like restorative, grounding, soothing, subtle can really elevate everyday conversation by giving words to moods and sensations we often experience.
Another useful pattern was descriptive repetition, like small, intentional actions, minor, familiar gestures, which emphasizes details and helps listeners remember vocabulary through rhythm.
We also integrated phrases for relaxation like let go of stress, sink into the moment, carry calm into tomorrow, which are natural ways to describe emotional states without being abstract.
Yes, in combining sensory words with actions like sipping tea, observing lights, listening to sounds, shows how to make a description vivid and immersive.
Finally, notice the use of present tense narration for reflection. I noticed my shoulders relax. I feel lighter. The mind shifts naturally. Present tense gives immediacy to storytelling.
Exactly. And by naturally including these verbs, adjectives, connectors, and expressions, we've created a conversation where vocabulary is memorable because it's tied to real experiences.
So, without making it a lesson, listeners pick up phrasal verbs, descriptive words, connectors, modal verbs, and expressions that they can immediately use in daily conversations.
Yes, and it's all connected to a story of a real day. So learners remember words not in isolation, but in context, which is far more effective for speaking and listening.
Even expressions for minor emotions, relief, or accomplishment like weight lifting off, sense of closure, light reflection become practical tools for describing daily life naturally.
Exactly, and learners can start using these immediately in similar contexts, like describing their own evenings, routines, or even moments of stress and relaxation.
So that's our natural vocabulary and grammar integration, showing how everyday words, phrasal verbs, and expressions appear organically in conversation.
Yes, and the best part is by listening and repeating, learners don't just memorize, they internalize how these phrases flow naturally.
And it's subtle, so they're learning without feeling like it's a lesson, making speaking and understanding smoother and more confident.
Exactly. By connecting words to real life routines and feelings, learners gain vocabulary, grammar awareness, and natural flow all at once.
So, next time you describe your day, remember these phrases and patterns. They can make your stories and reflections sound natural and engaging.
Yes, it's all about practice, awareness, and connecting vocabulary to life. Then English feels effortless rather than forced.
Wow, what a day! It's amazing how even simple routines and small pauses can be filled with expressions, phrasal verbs, and natural vocabulary that really bring English to life.
Yes, and remember the key is noticing these words in context, practicing them aloud, and using them in your own reflections or conversations. Small steps create real fluency over time.
We hope you enjoyed following our day and that you can take away some phrases, sentence structures, and ways to describe your own routines, stress, and relaxation naturally.
Exactly. And the best part is you can start using these today. Share them with a friend, describe your evening, or even just repeat them while relaxing. Every little bit counts.
Thank you so much for listening and spending this time with us. If you like this episode, make sure to hit subscribe, leave a comment, and let us know which moments or expressions you found most helpful.
And don't forget to share this with anyone who wants to practice real, natural English through everyday conversations. Until next time, enjoy your evening, reflect, relax, and speak confidently.
See you in the next episode.